Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State. We're also live on Facebook and on YouTube. We're having the crucial conversations that Erie needs, and this is an important one, as we're going to discuss and really understand, or try to anyway, the Civic Impact Project. It is a homegrown project here in Erie, Pennsylvania, to try to deal with the actual issues that many nonprofits in our community, especially social service agencies, to be more specific, are dealing with the loss of federal funding. And we have with us here Dr. DiMatteo. He's a professor at Gannon University, and he's part of this this project. He's also the Associate Executive Director of the Northeast Modern Language Association, which is a local nonprofit. Dr. DiMatteo, appreciate you being with us here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
All righty. We're a family show. We like the origin stories. Did you come up here in Erie, or did you transplant in?
I transplanted in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
As to be the English professor or Gannon?
Yep. Gannon hired me, recruited me away from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. But it has nothing like Presque Isle. So.
Right. Just a small world. My son lives in Elliotsville, which is on the west side of Bloomington.
Yeah, there's some really cool little stores over there. And,
Yeah. We're excited to have you with us here, and maybe you could share, why you got involved in the Civic Impact Project before we even talk about the project itself. But
sure. I was brought in the fall of last year by the founders of the organization, Dr. Linda Fleming, Dr. Chris Magno, and Chris Dobbs.
Okay.
And for me, the project held a lot of appeal because I've seen, since I've been here, which is only, at that time had only been about 5 years, but I'd seen how tightly interwoven nonprofits are into Erie's community, right? And for me, the fact that there was talk about the loss of federal funding, I knew from my own experience being involved as the Associate Executive Director of a nonprofit, like how impactful loss of funding can be and the strain that can put. And so I was, immediately intrigued when Dr. Magno invited me to be part of the project and to kind of help figure out what was going on in Erie.
Let's reintroduce Dr. Chris Magno. Welcome back, sir. Appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You got it here, and I wanted to maybe kind of get your take on. Were you one of the founders of this Civic Impact Project, or how did you get involved? So
I'm going to be one of the founders. We started this around July. Actually, we started this around April, the brainstorming of this project.
So less than a year.
It's less than a year, yes, that's right. Yeah, it's going to be almost a year next month. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so I received an email from Dr. Fleming, and she wants to go beyond, signature campaign or protesting, what else we can do that we can make a bigger impact. So I suggested that why not, let's measure the impact of federal funding cuts. Because back then, the first 3 months of the policy of the federal government is, cuts, elimination of some of the agencies, right? Or defunding some of the federal agencies. So thinking about it, I thought that it is going to have a really big impact. And that's based also in my previous research, back home in the Philippines and here in Erie, Pennsylvania.
All right, so let's talk about let's roll back a year ago. All right, and the some of the federal funding that got the most headlines that was cut was USAID. Did the cut of USAID have impact on Erie County nonprofits?
So most of the U.S. aid, that's more of service to other countries, right? And service to other countries, but at the same time, it's employing lots of American citizens. So when you eliminate USAID, you are eliminating the job performed by those people who are from the United States.
And the narrative was that, well, these are just people. I'm using editorial words, but they're just leeches in the District of Columbia, and they could go get other jobs. I mean, that was one of the narratives that was out there, right?
That's one of the narratives, that's been out there. But like when you talk about U.S. aid, you are also talking about the agricultural sector, where most of the produce that they create, we aid to developing countries who are in need.
We benefited from
that. I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
Like produce in terms of corn and rice, that we send to African countries, they need that. And the agricultural industries in the United States benefit a lot of those. Because I remember one time, like back home in the Philippines, that the Philippine government, they're negotiating with the United States that why not, instead of getting the produce from the U.S., just send us money, and we're going to use that money to buy produce from other countries or from our agricultural
our own
sector,
producers,
our own local producers, and the U.S. said no. So so when you eliminate,
they were benefiting
exactly
the avocado makers in
there's no freelance, right?
in California were benefiting from this. All right. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, so to bring this back to Erie, right? Because USA, there isn't a direct impact on Erie County for the cuts to USAID, right?
Right.
But there were cuts to other organizations in Erie. But I think one of the things that we were kind of concerned about is, if we didn't document the cuts, like if nobody was collecting that data, we wouldn't know what the full extent was. And if you're not documenting it and you don't know the full extent of the damage, you won't know what it will take to undo the damage, right? Like
100%, yeah. And I started with USAID because, again, it got the most headlines, right?
Yeah.
But there were probably dozens, if not hundreds, of federal programs that felt the wrath of Doge at the time. Again, rolling back a year from ago, right? And so let's key off of what Dr. Derek said here and say, okay, were you able to chronicle, were you able to catalog the various line items of the federal budget that took hits that did direct aid or indirect aid to Erie County nonprofits?
Yes, yeah. So based on our study, like funding for nonprofit organization in total, they lost around like $13.5 million, right?
Is that over a year? Is that over 5 years?
That's the immediate impact.
That was the immediate impact, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like a rescission, or maybe just not a renewal, or...
Well, it was some funds that had been promised that then weren't delivered.
Oh. So, like a rescission.
Yeah.
We made you a promise we're going to pay you that $1 million, and now you're not going to get it.
That's right. Yeah. We have nonprofit organization. They started using their own money because the federal funding didn't arrive and they didn't get reimbursed.
So $13.8 million. Wow.
Yeah, 13.5.
13.5.
Yeah, 13.5 million. Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine how, if you're talking about a nonprofit who has very thin margins,
which they all do.
Yeah. And if you're expecting a large portion of your revenue and you've budgeted for that, and it suddenly disappears, you're not going to have a lot in the bank to use for your operating expenses. And so there was a lot of anxiety that sudden loss of funding.
So the source of funding of our nonprofit organization, like 40% is from their own self-generation,
Like fundraising.
fundraising. That's
Or
right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or, donations and so on.
Donations but
Well, we can say like based on the report data that we got, right? So it was actually 43% of the nonprofit revenue came from earned income.
earned income. That's the term.
Then another 7% came from local philanthropy and generous community support, right? People in Erie donating money to these organizations. So what that means is about 50% of nonprofit funding for our local agencies comes from these two sources combined, right?
Local.
Locally, that their own earned income and then local philanthropy and community support. So where does the other half of their revenue, of their funding come from, right? It comes from government sources at 4 levels: the city, the county, the state, and the federal. And of that, the federal funding alone accounted for $106.7 million into Erie's organizations, and that's 28.1% of the total nonprofit revenue of the organizations that were surveyed.
So interesting. All right, I'm going to roll back for a second here. So the announcement, the Doge cuts or whatever.
That's right.
At what point did the folks say we need to study this? We need to start this Civic Impact Project, and tell us a little bit about that origin story.
Yeah. So when we proposed, we went to nonprofit partnership and the Erie Community Foundation. We sent them an email. They said right away, this is really important. We need to do this, and that's gonna be the first study. And when we started this, there's only 3 cities around the country doing the assessment,
doing
of
the
impact.
data,
the survey,
Wow.
assessing the impact, because it's very new. It's very new. When we search around, there's no model that we can follow. There's nothing. So we started from scratch. So there's one in Colorado, and there's one in New York, and then Erie, Pennsylvania.
Now, was it easy for the nonprofits kind of open their books and say, "Hey, this is what we got. This is our situation here."
It took them a while to answer the survey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's been a while that they don't really like check, and they hire somebody, right, to do the accounting and all of that. So it took them a while to really answer the survey. It's not easy. We did lots of follow up.
Okay.
And then we received an email. We are working on it. This is really important. We're gonna be answering this survey. So out of 500, we got 82 respondents. Out of 500 nonprofit organization in Erie, PA, we got 82 respondents who answered the survey in that first survey. So we did a follow-up survey around October. We received 72 respondents. But the second survey that we did it during the nonprofit partnership conference.
During the conference.
When you were there,
Yeah.
yeah. We have a table there, and we conducted the survey.
Okay.
And when you compare the first survey to the second survey,
Yeah.
sorry to say, it gets worse, because first there's a federal impact, and now you have the state impact, because back then there's like a shutdown at the state government level.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a double whammy when
Yeah.
we were meeting.
Yeah.
Is that you didn't have a state budget, you had a federal shutdown. Yeah, it had to have gotten worse. It was just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, like there's a delayed deliberation
Yeah.
of budget at the state level. Yeah.
Again, we could really get into the weeds of the data, and we will for a little bit, but we also have to talk about the human impact. But I got to take me a break first. It's 4:20. I'm talking to Dr. Magno and Dr. DiMatteo here on the Joel Natale Show about the Civic Impact Project. Stay with us. It's the Joel Natale Show here live from 5th and State. We're talking about the Civic Impact Project, and we kind of talked about its origin story. And let's talk about the basics of the work that you've been doing with this project here. You talked a lot about data collection and research, the survey, and so on. But go ahead, Dr. Magno. Yeah.
Yeah, so for this particular research, it's purely survey. So it's an online survey, and it's also face-to-face survey, like the follow-up survey we did like during the conference.
And you're dealing
We have
with
an
CEOs and CEOs of nonprofits mostly, or
Yes, the online survey, we got a really good response from the CEOs and executive directors.
Gotcha.
You know, they were the one like who answered the survey. So which is really good because they know how the budget works. So
That was also like why it was so time consuming, is because we needed in order to answer those questions, which were very financial specific questions, you had to have somebody at that level who could.
right?
That's right. And that's the reason we got the 13.5 million exact amount, because we, instead of clickable, you have suggested amount based on your
Right.
estimate, we asked for the exact amount, you know. We didn't lead them to any amount when we designed the survey.
It wasn't ranges.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't ranges,
Which
yeah.
a lot of times it'll be ranges because they don't want to be that specific.
Yeah.
But honestly, if they're all filing 990s, that's public knowledge anyway,
Yeah.
right? The tax return for a nonprofit. How much did you get? Any sense of how much of this federal funding was fee for service or pass throughs? Fee for service to the states, or was it block grants, as it were?
Yeah,
any idea?
Block grants is going to be part of the pass-through. So there's a lot of pass-through. Pass-through
Okay.
means when they pass it to other big nonprofit organization, and then that big
Or even the
nonprofit
state, the
distribute it.
Department of Ed, or
That's right, the
Department of
Education. That's right.
Human Services, right?
Human Services, yeah, and then they distribute it to a small nonprofit organization. That's what the pass-through mean. So based on that research that we have, so you have, the biggest chunk is from federal government directly, and then we have the pass-through, around 30%,
Okay.
like pass-through funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that you mentioned that it even impacted city and county funds. How did that work? Like, I mean, again, is that
Yeah, so like you have direct cuts, so they need to adjust their services. They need to lay off. They need to terminate some of the services, which is really hard. And the part of the adjustment that they did is they need to apply for more grant funding, or they need to do more fundraising, or we need to start thinking like, what are the ways that we don't need to defend anymore from the federal funding. Instead, we need to create a permanent sources of income as a nonprofit. Like the example I give to them is, how about, can we organize cooperatives among refugee organizations, like running a grocery stores owned by refugee organizations, and the income from that is gonna go to the nonprofit supporting them. Like more local source of income instead of like federal.
Dr. DiMatteo, that really was the issue, was the refugee resettlement programs. It became the most alarming, or maybe kind of the 5-alarm bell on this, right?
I mean, that was
seemed
certainly one of the things that was alarming for us. So, just as an example, when the Multicultural Center, the International Institute, and the Catholic Charities lose $1 million in federal funding, that has an outsized impact, and there's a multiplier effect, because that money doesn't stop within the refugee community. It's that money then would have been spent
sure
on local businesses and contracts with local business to renovate houses. Right.
And basically it's a 5-year window. I mean, we've covered this, pretty extensively over the past year or so. once you give that green light for somebody to come to your town, that you're gonna sponsor them as a refugee.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, we have a 5-year plan
Program,
for you.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And then
Yeah.
if it's rescinded and we're not going to honor
Yeah.
the contract. That's
Yeah.
and mind you, let me be clear. The lack of honoring those contracts, remember, that goes back into 2024. They weren't getting money in October of 2024, which was even before the current administration. Something happened with refugees that seemed to just make things very difficult for
And
these
those are basic needs when we
organizations.
talk about refugee, from housing,
Yeah.
food,
Absolutely.
education, like.
We got to go to our news break here. We are talking about the Civic Impact Project. More ahead on Talk Erie. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio with these crucial conversations talking about the Civic Impact Project, getting an update. Dr. Chris Magno and Dr. Derek DiMatteo from, they're both from Gannon, but they're involved with this project as well. And Dr. Derek, you were talking a bit about this multiplication or multiplier effect, so that when, let's say, a nonprofit is not getting those dollars from the federal government, it's not just hurting them, but there's a domino effect that goes to that. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to give you two examples of where we can sort of see that happening in action in Erie. So one would be Presque Isle. They receive federal funding for sand replenishment, which is about $1.5 million a year, and for 2 years in a row now. Obviously in 2025 they received no funding, and then again this year no funding. So there'll be no sand replenishment performed on Presque Isle's beaches, and so the way in which that we can see that having a multiplier effect would be, since Presque Isle is a huge value add to Erie County's economy, right? The tourism that Presque Isle brings in, is an estimated $1 billion. Wow. So if our kind of crown jewel is not being replenished and renewed, and the tourists who come are kind of like, oh, this is the bad experience, then tourism falls, and right. that $1 billion kind of also falls, right?
You see the evidence of it in a place like Beach 7, where you have basically a cliff, and instead of the natural sandy beach that would flow out there. Yeah. Now, let me push back just a little bit, because what we're hearing is that whoever the powers that be did not promote this strong enough to the feds, and that the Erie leaders kind of took their eye off the ball with that particular line item of not pushing. And, we have this $1.7 trillion deficit, so we got to cut somewhere. So we lost our $1.5 million in sand. That's the counter argument, Doc.
Sure. I mean, I guess you could pin, if you're trying to pin the blame somewhere. I suppose you could say people didn't try hard enough to maintain that funding, right? But I mean, who do you talk to about that? Like, there's your state representatives.
Basically it's either Congressman Kelly and Senators Fetterman and McCormick. I mean, where else do you go?
Right, but it's hard. I mean, like, those aren't the only line items, right, that are affected by this.
Is it federally funded, like the replenishment of the
It's like half and half. I think there's a state match that's required. Yeah. So we ended up not getting anything, basically.
Yeah. But that is, when you're mentioning elected officials, right? Like, is one of the things that's something that we as just private citizens can actually do. So I think that is actually really important. So, supporting our community and our community nonprofits by contacting elected officials, right? You can identify both federal, state, and local officials through www.usa.gov. And identify who those people are, write to them, tell them you support the reinstatement of previously existing federal funding, or that you support the creation of new federal funding for nonprofits here in Erie. Talk about the specific things that have affected you, like what these cuts mean to you, that we can't get sand replenishment and the knock-on effects that has. If I can add another example.
Sure.
In our original survey, 48% of the nonprofits listed education as a core service area. 30% also listed youth development as a major focus. And so, one of the largest serving Erie is the United Way, which receives a lot of federal funding, which it then distributes to each and every underfunded school in the city of Erie. right? So these federal funding cuts directly affect every child in the Erie school system. So, the three examples that we've given, have been the refugee community, Presque Isle, which is one of our great jewels, and then our school system.
Yeah,
Right?
these are not small constituencies. This is not a niche deal here. This is broad-based impact. Is that what you saw when you did, especially when you did the original survey? What kind of jumped out at you? Because you did the follow-up in October, but when you got the first amount of data, was there anything shocking? Was there anything surprising from the data results?
Yeah, the shocking about it is we are not really addressing the problem when we are cutting the funding to address the deficit. The problem is becoming worse because the main problem, for example, of the city of Erie, we have a declining population. And the reason why we maintain our population because of the refugee, right? And we have abandoned neighborhood. Like if we have refugee and we house them in those abandoned neighborhood, they rehabilitate those neighborhood. They started paying taxes. Right. Gannon can benefit because they go to Gannon University, so there's a neutralizing effect.
The teachers union benefits because there's more kids.
That's right.
In the school district. I mean, you think about and then, all of the cascading
and
impacts.
Also like our manufacturing, especially the plastic manufacturing that we have, most of the people they hire are from the refugee sector. See, if we don't support them, then where are they gonna get their labor force to continue their operation?
Yeah, and so kind of a penny wise pound foolish approach almost.
Yeah, but then that's one of the problems though, is because as I'm a literary scholar, so I'm going to use a literature example here. If you have read Charles Dickens, one of his novels is Hard Times, and in the novel Hard Times, there is a main character whose name is Gradgrind, and he is an economist, and he has a home office, and he sits in his home office, which is dark and full of books, and he just pores over these books of accounts and statistics. And based on pure numbers, he advises local government and local businesses, factory owners, about what they should do to increase their profits and to be more efficient. And the book, this novel, contrasts that. Like there's a juxtaposition of his behavior and his actions and decision making, and then the effects on the actual people who live in the community. And all these people who labor in the factories and work and shop and all, right? And so
that was a major Dickens theme, right?
Yeah, and
throughout most of his.
But what you can see is like these people who are completely disconnected from the lives around them, making decisions based on numbers, right? So looking only at the numbers, making decisions based on that, and not connecting it to the human element. And so Dickens is critiquing that in Hard Times, right? And so what our project does basically is try to connect the dots, reduce that disconnect, right? By if we're able to measure the impact, and then we can write up a report and we can talk about how it's affecting real people, and then we can send that information back to the politicians who are looking only at numbers. Right. Hopefully we can add a human face to that and make them think about the consequences of, it's just a line item, right? There's only text, there's no people involved. Well, there are people involved, right? And there are communities that are being hurt.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of framing it, Derek, because the survey that we did is based from the voices of the people who are running this nonprofit organization. We didn't invent the number,
right?
From anywhere else. We got their voices through the survey, and then we measured the impact.
Do you get any sense of significant impact or detriment to some of these great society programs that have been around 60 years? I mean, we basically have built an infrastructure around
Yes.
federal funding for these programs, and a lot of those took a hit, didn't they?
Yeah. Based on the literature that I read, and the reason this is really important to do, of measuring the impact, they said like cutting the funding and eliminating the services, it's like a natural disaster. A natural disaster is like a typhoon or a hurricane, and it's so destructive that if you don't collect the data and if you don't monitor, it's hard to rebuild.
All right, we've got like 7 minutes left here. I want to get to the solution side. So now you've done 2 surveys. You did a survey in the spring. You did a follow-up in the fall. Found that indicators were going more south, as you do it. What are CEOs, board members, nonprofit leaders doing with the data? And I guess, is this a new normal for them, or are they fighting back? What's going on?
They are not really fighting back, but they are presenting the data. So there's a plan to bring the data at the state level at the Harrisburg and present it, as a fact, and so that our policymakers will realize that, this is really happening, and they need to.
So
pay
there's still some
attention.
folks in denial, you think? I mean, even at the state senator, state representatives.
It's hard to say because we haven't talked to them directly, but the impression that I have is that there's a sort of vague awareness that the cuts haven't been good, but there's not a concrete understanding of the impact that it's had. And so hopefully our report will provide some more concrete understanding of.
Do you plan on
that.
testifying in front of a committee, or
If we were asked to do so?
is that
but-
something that you'd probably lobby for?
Yeah. So the result of the survey is like we're making a face, like this is the impact.
In a more like immediate sense, though, the results of our report have been very instrumental locally already. We were able to present the data to the Funders Forum, which is a collection of local businesses and philanthropic organizations that regularly pour philanthropic money into our community. And so we were able to kind of help them see the need for a rapid response in terms of funding. And so that was a really positive
Yeah,
reaction.
I mean, again, we can report that the Erie Community Foundation, which had that rapid response fund during COVID, brought it back last year specifically for the refugee resettlement issue. Because again, they had an obligation to these people that they thought they were contracted for funding, and then that contract went away. So.
I would say one of the other things that's like really that the organizations themselves said in the report, they themselves said that one of the most helpful things would be raising public awareness through media and other platforms. And so Talk Erie, and Joel, you having us on this show, I think is one of those ways. Like this is a significant action, I think, on your part that sort of meets some of the needs that the organizations themselves, right? And so just, as I said earlier, another one is advocacy for more stable and supportive policies from public officials was another thing that the organizations reported as what they perceived would be like very, very helpful, right? And so again, contacting elected officials is super important. And I think, then the other piece I would say would be donating or volunteering with the organizations, right? Because they've had funding cuts and they have had staffing reductions. And so any support that our community, if you have time, anything that we can do to volunteer would be really helpful. So you can actually go to www.yournpp.org, click on volunteering, and you'll see ways to get involved in local Erie community organizations.
Do you think that this is a moment where there's going to be a kind of we mentioned natural disasters, like an earthquake, like a shaking of the normal of way of doing business as a nonprofit. Do you think that this is a point in time where it's going to require fundamental change and maybe that's the point?
It started, like Canada, for example, they realized, oh my goodness, our neighbor is cannot be reliable anymore. And we need to go to other countries to get supplies for our car manufacturing. We need to partner with China and other countries because, they stopped going here in the United States as a tourist. Our tourist industry is declining. So it's going to be a moment that we need to say to ourselves, because of this impact, that we will never do this again because it's just so bad.
But I mean, I think that's one possible reaction. Not to argue against that, but I would also say, in my experience, having just run a international academic conference, we're typically, because we're a Northeast association, we get a lot of people from Quebec and Lower Ontario who come to our convention. And this year, many of our Canadian members did not come to the convention. And so that, we held the convention in Pittsburgh, so that, we bring about 2,000 people in. So for 4 days.
That's a big deal. Economic impact.
Yeah, exactly. And we're bringing them to Erie in 2028.
Wow.
Our convention is going to be held in Erie in 2028. So my concern is, and I chose Erie because we made this plan, years ago. And so before all these cuts, and we didn't know what was going to, that these kinds of policies would be implemented. But I was so excited to bring this convention to Erie because I knew the kind of impact that it could have on our community, and again, the multiplier effect. So now I'm concerned because, all of the international members, not just the Canadian ones, but we have, 30 different countries represented. Wow. And so people are not flying in because of these restrictive policies. And so what kind of impact does this have? Is this the new normal, you asked? I hope not. But if it is, then we have to adapt to that in some way, right?
Yeah, there's a spillover. Okay, so